Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Sorry for the delay. We are having some technical issues. So today's topic that we're going to be discussing with NISA Helpline is um, navigating learning at home during COVID-19. We have someone joining us from Smiles Canada today. Her name is Akila Dada. She is a child author, child life specialist, and a teacher, um, and has been with Smiles Canada for more than 10 years. Akila, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, assalamu alaikum, everybody. Like you said, I'm a child life specialist. I currently work at McMaster Children's Hospital. I'm on an inpatient unit with kids that have eating disorders. I am an Ontario certified teacher and taught elementary students for a few years before I actually started working at the hospital. And I've been with Smile Canada for a few years. And just for those of you who don't know, Smile Canada Support Services is an organization that supports local Muslim children living with disabilities and their families. I did co-author a children's book with my sister, and I'm also a student completing my master's. So, got a lot on my plate. I've also got two boys. So,
That's awesome. You have some really great background and knowledge, and I'm looking forward to discussing more about today's topic. So I want to share a little bit about myself. I currently am working in a child care center. I have many years of experience of working with the children with special needs, learning disabilities. I actually have a disability myself, so I'm a huge advocate for inclusion, advocacy, and breaking down barriers and stigmas around all type of challenges and disabilities. I sit on many boards and provide many roles in a lot of organizations. To name a few is Fighting Blindness Canada, the CNIB, the Canadian Institute for the Blind. And I also volunteer with NISA Helpline. I started off as a counselor coordinator to go on to become to be a trained counselor as well. Currently, I am taking a little break from these roles with NISA. Just I have a lot on my plate at the moment, but I'm looking forward to getting back with NISA and providing as support as much as I can. And so when I got this opportunity, I agreed to help facilitate this workshop. So just wanted to get into a few questions for Akila. So what are some difficulties around learning at home for children specifically with the pandemic do you think is happening right now?
so I think one of the biggest difficulties is just how different it really is. It doesn't matter whether you're at school or learning from home; things look so different than what we're traditionally used to here in Canada. There's also so many unknowns, and that can be super stressful for both children and parents as well. I think in this situation, we just have to remember that we're doing the best that we can for our families given the current situation. So some families may choose to send their children to school, and some may choose to keep their children at home, and both may have equally good reasons for doing so. It's just such an unprecedented time, and there isn't really a good solution. So, kind of regardless of what you decide for your family, there are many challenges for kids learning right now. So, at school, could include just the changes of not being able to share supplies, less group work, more independence. Some kids, they might thrive on this, and other kids might really struggle with this. Um, Everyone's wearing masks. That can be super challenging in itself. First of all, to spend the entire day with a mask, but also to be able to learn things like language with a mask on. So, watching your teacher when they're speaking, it's really important to be able to see their mouth. So, that's obviously creating a huge challenge right now. And also the social aspect of school has really changed. So, there's a lot of your friends that might actually be at home right now. And those feelings of, are my parents doing what I want? And then also being able to see the kids in your school, but maybe not being able to play with them the way that you would traditionally be doing in the past. And also the increased rules and regulations that school have. So might feel like a much more stricter environment that kids are used to. And I think there's also a huge fear of getting sick, of having symptoms that might be seen as sick. So even like a simple cough or a runny nose, or for a kid that might have asthma, like just that fear of what are people going to think if I start coughing, even if we know it might be caused from something else. And then the fear of having a teacher absent, or what happens if the school closes, like what's going to happen then. And just there's, again, so many unknowns. And then there's challenges that kids face that are at home. So for kids that are at home, a lot of parents are saying like things that they're finding really challenging are that their kids are so unmotivated to learn independently without a teacher, right? Um, a lot of people are finding that it's also just too much screen time. Like we talked about this for generations and kind of generations, like they've talked about, not sitting your kid down in front of a TV all day, and not putting them in front of the computer, and how bad it is for them to be looking at the screen. And then all of a sudden kids are expected to kind of spend their full day in front of the computer, so that it can be very challenging. um, Social interaction with friends is definitely another thing. So if you're learning from home, then when are you getting to see your friends? And they are seeing their friends sometimes online and in school, but they're not really allowed to talk to each other, right? Like it's just, you put up your hand if you have a question, and the teacher calls on you, you might see your other friends, but you're not really getting to socially interact with them. And then technology, like we're starting a half hour late today, and we're kind of used to doing this, right? Like Nissa helpline has done this before, we've done this before, and yet we're half an hour kind of a delayed start time, because technology is hard and it can be challenging for people that do know what they're doing, but then add that stress on to children and to parents that already have busy lives, maybe multiple siblings. Like it definitely does cause a different added layer of stress.
Yeah,
And
and I would
then
also think, like, sorry to interrupt, but I would
no, no,
also
no.
think, especially like, parents or families that are just don't have like strong internet connections, or just don't have, a proper equipment or technology for their child to do learning at home right now too.
Yeah, it takes away the choice, right? Like I might have chosen to keep my child at home, and I'm able to make that choice. But if you don't even have access to the technology, you don't really have the choice that you might want. You might want to keep your child home, but might have to send them to school. And again, I think that's something we have to remember as a community when we think we've made the right decision and we know what the right decision is, that we don't know other people's circumstances or their reasons for choosing maybe the opposite thing that we chose. So again, I would just like to say as a community, like really try to support people in the choice that they felt was best for their family, because I think truly people are doing what they feel is best for their family. And right now it's kind of creating a lot of divide in the community with no, you're doing not doing the right thing, the right thing is to keep them at home, or no, 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 the right thing is to send them to school because of the social interaction. And I don't think in this situation there is a right. I think we just are doing the best that we can do.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of, I think, just unknowns right now, and things are just changing on a daily day basis in terms of just new restrictions and rules and all of that. And it's really hard, I think, as a parent to make the best decision for your child.
And it's
Um,
constantly evolving, right? Like we
yeah,
think we made the right decision. We also thought the pandemic would be way over. So this was supposed to be kind of like a short term decision. And then summer happened, and then we're back kind of at it again. So I think it's just, we don't know. There's no kind of like foreseeable end in sight. We know that there's an end, but we don't know when that's going to be. And that can make it really challenging.
for sure. So I want to ask you, why do you think it's important to discuss this at this time?
I think kind of like what we've mentioned, like it's gone on for a long time. It's not like we haven't been doing this for a month or 2 months. We're like, it's been a long time. And I think just to acknowledge that our role as parents have really changed, and finding a balance between these roles is very challenging. So, normally we might have just been kind of like our kid's parent, but now we've taken on all these extra roles. So at some point in the pandemic, regardless of whether your kids are at school or learning from home, there's probably been a point where you've turned into your child's educator. something, a lot of parents would have been happy before saying, okay, it's school time, like go do your learning at school. And now we're having to learn like math or algebra or, social studies and all these things that we kind of didn't really have to worry about in the past. On top of being an educator, we might now be also our child's healthcare provider. So a lot of doctors' offices are doing virtual visits. And also parents have that fear of like, oh, maybe I should take them in, but what about if they catch something? And so they're kind of not going in to do medical visits for small things that they might have done in the past. So um, we're kind of also now being asked to screen before we go to set. If we're sending our kids to school or to enter some buildings, we have to do our pre-screening for COVID symptoms and signs. So we're kind of also becoming their healthcare provider, right? So just these different
Yeah.
hats. We're also becoming our kids' best friend. Like they're lacking that social interaction. So they're not being able to see their friends or family of people that we might have been used to. Whereas before you might go to a park and meet a parent, grab a cup of coffee and watch your kids play. Now you might be sitting in a sandbox building castles and rolling down hills. And
Yeah.
even though in the moment it's just one thing, all of these extra hats that we're having to put on, I think, especially for such an extended period of time, can really take a toll on families, right? Like we have to discuss it and we have to acknowledge that it's hard and because we don't have an end in sight, it's going to continue to be hard. And I think we just have to remember whether you're a parent or not a parent, right now is really the time to kind of step up and help community members that might be struggling.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so what are some strategies you can suggest in terms of learning at home or for parents?
So one of the biggest things I think is to have a designated space for your child's learning. And that doesn't have to be like a desk in a room. If you have a desk and you have the extra space, then great. They can have like a little classroom set up. Some people have the luxury of having a lot of space and other people don't. And just making it work however you can. If that means there's, a little designated space on the family kitchen table. But just to have a space that the child can go to when it's their time for learning that's different, maybe different, or maybe you just set it up differently during learning time. And also to really stick to a structured routine. Create a schedule with your kids that includes like meal times, playtime, learning time, exercise, and downtime, and have their input in activities that they would like. Help them discover new activities that they can add in there. Try things like maybe cooking or try photography, an online family paint night. There's lots of options available. It's kind of thinking outside of the box. And one of something that's really important that tends to get lost when kids are home is the bedtime routine. So it's really hard for kids to learn if they're not getting their sleep. And it's really hard for kids to go to sleep on time when we're home and we don't have that. We're not, having to get up at a certain time to leave for school, but they still do have to attend their school and do their learning, whether that be homeschooling or virtual schooling. Setting a bedtime is really important for kids.
Yeah, I think overall in routines, especially when everyone's home, is very important to have. I know when I was home for a couple months, I kind of got out of a routine and I was like, oh, I need to get back into that routine. So I think even if not a child, but even as adults, it's really important to have that routine when you are just what's the right word, like just having to be at home at all times. I think it really helps structure, and I think it's really important as well for children to have that, especially when they're trying to do online learning from home.
And
So my next
and
question is, yeah, go
sorry, I
ahead.
was just going to say, and to make sure that you include things like breaks, right? Like breaks and play and fun are very important. And being a mom of two kids, one being in virtual school right now, it's
Mhm.
easy to get so busy with virtual school that when you're done, you kind of are like, okay, I need to, have dinner. I need to make dinner. I need to clean my house. I need to give them a bath. I need to do this, and this. But then at the end of the day, you have to think like, did you give your kids the time that they needed to actually play and have fun? And it is very, very important to make sure that we're doing that. There's small things that we can do in our life to make things easier, like pack your child's backpack, even if they're working from home. have all the supplies kind of in one area, include some snacks that they can eat, a fidget spinner if they need one, their crayons. So as a parent, you're not running around the whole day. Your child is saying, "Oh, my teacher said like now I need glue and scissors," and we're like, "Oh, we don't know where that is." Just like you would if you were sending your kid to school, right? Like have a backpack ready with their supplies and everything in order the night before so that it makes that day go a little bit smoother. Some of the other things are make sure you're
Yeah. And I
talking.
think it just in terms of just making it a little bit more fun for them too, that even though they're at home, I still have a backpack and I have all these things inside, and this is my designated learning area. So I'm still doing the whole motion of being in school, but just from my house.
Yeah, and do things like when they go to school, kids get super excited when when their teacher gives them a sticker on their paper for doing a good job. Like you could
Yeah.
still incorporate some of those rewards and the things that they might be missing about school into your life as a parent, right? So doing those little things. And another thing is talk to your children. Like do the check-ins with them. Like actually sit down and say like, is there anything that I could do to help you be more successful, or check in with them, find out how are they finding school. It's so easy to say, "Oh, my kid sits in front of the computer and they seem like they're doing really well," but how are they actually feeling about being at home doing school rather than, being in person school? Or how are they feeling about being in person school when half their friends are getting to stay home? So having those important honest conversations, watching for things like, is your kid getting more headaches than they used to, like fresh air and stuff like that would really help. But limiting screen time when we don't need to be on there, so when the teacher gives them a break, to actually turn the computer screen off for a little bit, not allowing them to type, maybe give them, old school pen and paper and let them write. And if you are finding that your kid is struggling, reach out and talk to your teacher.
And I think as parents, sometimes, we're just so on the go, especially if you have more than one child. And, if you're working from home and you just have so much on your plate and you're just on the go, 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 that sometimes you forget to, take that extra minute or that extra bit of time to check in with your child, to, incorporate that playtime with them as well. And not just be like, okay, go play now. Mommy has to do like all these other things and put dinner on the table.
Exactly.
So my other question for you is, what resources would could you provide, if any, for learning at home?
So there's a ton of online learning resources. Like there's a lot of great websites, like Khan Academy or Epic Books, like that really your teacher can help guide to what's age appropriate. But there's also things that parents don't know about, like the Ontario curriculum, for example, is all online. As a parent, if you are worried that your child is not learning what you feel like they should be learning, or there's always this comparison happening online, like my child is doing this and getting this much time and they're learning about this, and other parents are saying, my teacher seems like they're not doing their job properly. Go read the actual Ontario curriculum for your grade. It's broken down by grade and by subject, and if you just Google Ontario curriculum, it's very easy to learn and find out, by the end of their grade, what is it that they're expected to know. As a parent, you should also know what they're expected to know, and then it kind of takes away some of the stress of, is my kid learning enough? Am I doing enough as a parent? As long as you know that they're kind of doing what they need to do by the end of the year, this is a great guide for families, I would say. There's a few COVID related resources that are also really good. There's one called COVID with Kids, just for kids. It's by a few psychiatrists, and they really break down their page into a few main categories and provide a lot of relevant information that's specific to the pandemic. So, how to talk to your kids about the pandemic, how to parent during a pandemic, how to return to school, um, how to connect with other people, stay safe, create structure. It's very pandemic specific. So if you're looking for pandemic specific resources to help with your child, that is definitely a great one. There's
Mhm.
actually a quote from there that I just wanted to read because it really stood out for me. And it says, "Connecting with our children is not about creating detailed activities that cover every minute of the day. It's not possible or practical to be engaged with them all the time, especially if you're also working from home." Connecting means finding times across the day to share moments of nurturing and affection, to cuddle, hug, kiss them, read a story, play a game, watch them play, let them help us cook or sort laundry. In times of intense change, children feel safe and secure when they can trust you to be there. That's when they become free to do their work, playing, learning, exploring, and creating. You don't have to be perfect. And I think as parents, we do a lot of comparisons with each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
And social media is notoriously bad for this, right? Like parents post what they're
Yeah.
doing, or they shame other parents for making choices that they don't feel that are right. Um, but just again, remembering that people are doing the best that they can with what they have in this current situation. So just trying to be as a community really supportive of each other, and remember that it doesn't have to be perfect. Kids are resilient and they're going to get through this. And we just have to make sure we also get through this. And that's by taking it kind of one day at a time. There's also a lot of really good, there's a few of them out there. And again, they're very easy to find on Google, but very COVID specific workbooks and journals. And what I like about the workbooks and journals is that you can do it as a family. And they not only include like how COVID has negatively impacted um, your life, but they also kind of look at the positives that COVID may have had. And sometimes that's really hard to see, especially when it's been so long kind of stuck in this pandemic. But things like increased time with family, right? If you ask my 4-year-old, and he doesn't know any better. But this pandemic has been amazing for him because he gets mommy and daddy time all day. He doesn't have to go to school. He gets to see a small bubble. Like for him, he sees what he wants to see, and being able to see some of the positives, maybe learning a new skill, or getting through a book that you never thought you'd get through. Those types of things is really important. And those journals and time capsules that are out there that are COVID specific also do some planning for the future. So, what would post COVID life look like? And because we've been kind of stuck in the pandemic for so long, it's hard to remember that there is an end in there's an end. We can't see it right now, but it's out there, and it gives people something to plan and look forward to. So I would suggest, if you've never taken a look at those, I would suggest just looking one up and adapting it so you can do a few activities out of some of those as a family. Um, because I do find that the topics and things that they cover can be super helpful for families to discuss with their children.
For sure. Yeah. Well, that kind of actually led into my next question is like, as families, what can they do to get more involved in their child's learning? And I think you kind of touched on it like just now by doing journals and time capsules and things like that, and making it a family game or anything else, I guess you can add to that or.
Just make learning part of everyday life, right? Like if you think of a simple activity, like cooking, by doing something simple like cooking, you have your child to pick a recipe that they might want to make, or you teach them, if they're older, maybe like a heirloom recipe of something that, age appropriate, right? We pick a recipe that they might like. But that simple activity of cooking with your child can turn into teaching them language. You can write out a recipe card. They can help make a grocery list. Um, it can turn into math. They can be learning about measurements, portion sizes, fractions, like all sorts of things, right? You can even make that a social studies activity. Where do the ingredients come from? Talking about farming, importing, exporting produce. That same activity can then be about science, like if you're talking about, water evaporating from a pot in different states of matter. So with one simple activity, you can be teaching your kids, a week's worth of what they would have learned in school. But the hands-on examples is what they're kind of missing with virtual school. They're missing the hands-on learning. So as families, we need to provide these kind of like teachable moments, like where in our day, not that we're going extra and printing out worksheets, but where in our day can we use little things that we're already doing, to teach our kids about something that they might be learning about in school, or to teach them something that we actually want them to know. So maybe even learning a new skill, or learning, taking the time to do some stuff about Quran, or like learning a new language, or really anything, but taking time in our day and not putting so much stress on parents to make it perfect, but to make it fun and something we do as a family.
Mhm. Yeah. I just wanted to touch, so if any families out there or parents that are listening to this, and if they have a child or children that have any learning challenges pre-existing, um, could you provide any tips or how they could make learning more um, easier for the parent and the child? Because I know when they go to school, there's a lot of resources and supports set in place. And now, if their child is being homeschooled, are there any resources or supports that can be given to them while they're being homeschooled right now?
So that question is a very kind of specific to the challenge that they're facing.
Mhm.
I know right now it's taken a little bit of time, but they are looking at children's IEPs. So if your child does have a diagnosis, then I would say definitely work with your teacher to see what they would suggest, because they would know them, and the parent obviously would know the child the best, so they can kind of work and see like what specific strategies would be proper for that child. If you're worried about your child, you're worried about your child possibly having a learning disability, or worried about your child in any other way, I would definitely reach out to both your teacher and your pediatrician, because those are the people that would help guide you and get you the answers that you're looking for. So if you're worried about your child kind of being behind, definitely speak to your teacher. And also, this is kind of the first time that as parents we get to see the comparison, right? Like my
Yeah,
son is just starting JK, but it's hard for me to not judge his ability based on everybody else's ability, because this is the first time I get to see all of his the kids in his class
yeah,
and see, is he doing, like, is he the top of his class? And that as a parent can be really cause a lot of anxiety and worry.
yeah,
Um because we that's the first thought, right? Like, is there something wrong with my child if he's not at the top? Like, does he maybe have something to explain why I'm having such a difficult time teaching him his ABCs, for example, or something like that, right? So, again, if you have any worries of those types, and I think they might be coming up more because of that situation, you're seeing your child um, in a place where you're seeing everybody else's child, so it's really hard to not compare. But definitely reach out and talk to your teacher and talk to your pediatrician if you feel like you need to go down that route as well.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know. I just wanted to, like, I guess, kind of bring that up there. Parents are concerned because they are spending a lot of time with their children, and really seeing um how they are learning, and what and we do tend to do a lot of comparisons, and we start worrying, and have all these thoughts in our heads, and it's like sometimes, I guess, we just don't know where to go. But that's, like, reach out to the teacher, reach out to your pediatrician, and get the answers that you need, or just to make sure that your child is you know um
Yeah, and
getting
ask
the
the
right support.
questions,
And
right?
so, exactly, yeah.
Try not to have that internal worry. Like if you are have any concerns, just ask. Like ask, and if you're not satisfied with the answer, then ask somebody else. Like if you ask your teacher and you're still worried, then go to your pediatrician and seek the additional information that you might be looking for to help guide you. But definitely ask the questions that you feel you need to ask. And it is hard as a parent. Like my child recently was like, we were told they were doing assessments to place them, and that it's so nervous when I can see everybody else's kids and how they're performing, that to make sure, like, is my child going to be at the top? And it's really hard to not judge in that situation. And I think a lot of parents are struggling with that. It's the first time they're seeing their kids perform constantly, right? In front of a computer, where even small things like, can my kid sit? Like, well, there's other kids that are sitting. Like, my child should be able to sit. Well, every child learns
Mhm.
differently. And that's the honest truth. As a teacher, like, even in a classroom,
Yep.
every child learns differently, and kids are kind of being forced to learn in a very specific way. And
Right.
it might just be that your child is a much more hands-on learner, or that
Yep.
your child needs a fidget spinner to get through sitting in a class for 30 minutes, and might need something to play with. A lot of kids just they can't sit without having something in their hand. It's very distracting. So try something like a fidget spinner, let them have, therapy or Play-Doh in their hand, and that might actually help their understanding and them being able to learn if they're able to have that bit of a distraction. So try different tips like that. But if you are concerned, my biggest suggestion would be to reach out to your teacher for sure as a start.
And I just want to point like it's okay for the parents. It's okay for your child to have those things in their hands to get through the learning and being able to sit and get through their class. Like it's okay and it's normal. So it's not something to be conscious about or be
No,
ashamed
not
or
at
anything like
all.
that. I just wanted to point that because I know a lot of times I think parents when we do a lot of comparison and a lot of like of that, then we like, well, that child can sit without not, not having a fidget spinner or Play-Doh in their hand, and how come my child does? But it's just like you said, every child learns
Even
differently,
things
so it's
like
not.
even things like giving them a few minute breaks to get off their chair and stay in front of their computer if you feel like that's working for them, but take away their chair and let them stand for a few minutes, right? Like some kids just need to be up and moving, and we see this in a regular classroom as well. The difference in a regular classroom is they get to do a lot more of that, right? Like they get to do a
Yeah.
lot more of the hands-on thing. But this is not something that teachers are not used to. They're used to children being learning, having different learning styles. So again, try these small things. If you're concerned or need some tips, or even something like, I don't know how to get my kid to sit down, reach out to the teacher because they might surprise you with some of the suggestions that they have. And again, it's not, from a teacher's perspective, um, seeing kids that learn differently is not something that they're not used to, right?
So we have some questions coming in that I will go over. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment box below, and inshallah, we'll try our best to get through all of them. So the first question that has come in is, what can we do about the excessive screen time issue?
So I would say make sure that you're giving your child breaks. And if you're really worried about, reach out to the teacher and ask if there's times in the day where, maybe they can provide you the work, but you actually turn the screen off. And then, unfortunately for kids, because you want to make sure that they're doing their additional playtime, and maybe as a treat after school, they were doing, like a movie or something, that we really do have to limit their screen time outside of school, and remind yourself that hopefully this is not forever, right? Like this is the temporary normal. But it will go back to the way that it used to be, inshallah. um so just try to find other activities and make sure that you are giving your kids break and get them outside and get fresh air. And again, talk to your teacher if you're finding that, and just ask for times in the day where they can be off the screen.
Yeah, so the next question is, how can parents take care of their well-being while giving the best for their children and providing the best for their children at home right now?
So taking care of your own mental health is very important. I think that doing things as a family, for example, like we've talked a lot about like making sure kids get out and get some fresh air and get some exercise, but that goes for parents as well. Like we need a mental break from the pandemic stuff that's happening right now. So making sure that you're doing that you're taking some time, some self-care. So some simple activity that you could do with your child is do something like get the ingredients from your house. They're super easy, like things you can find around home, but do a DIY, like a do it at home activity craft to make something like a body butter or a scrub. And then take that extra time to actually enjoy that. So, maybe a few minutes of somebody else watching your kids, if that's possible, and taking a few extra minutes in the shower and really kind of enjoying um, maybe your homemade scrub or your homemade body butter or something that you might have made with your child. But taking the time to do that activity, first of all, can be very self-soothing. But it can also provide like the endless kind of like lasting thing that you guys can talk about or try different things like that.
Yeah, self-care is very important. I think as moms and as parents, we forget that, especially now since you're juggling so many things at once, especially if you're working from home and then trying to have your kids teaching them virtually from home if you are, or even dropping them off to school, whatever decision. I think there's just a lot going on, and I think we forget to take that bit of time out for ourselves during the day for some self-care and just take to like just breathe. And
Also
so I think it's really
the social isolation part is really hard as well, right? And although we might not be able to get together with friends and family, we can still communicate with them. And I think it's important to take the time and talk to somebody if you're feeling stressed out. Talk to a friend and, set up a little bit of time to do that. So set your child up if you can. And if you're able to, set up a time for you to talk on the phone for 10 minutes with somebody every day. And even though it's 10 minutes, it might be 10 minutes that might be able to get you through your day. But I think it is important to really, be able to have somebody that you can reach out to. And again, whether that's a family or a friend, but just have a go-to person that you can reach out to talk about it.
Yeah, that's very important to have that network and supports, I think, in place. And even though we can't do physical in-person things, but virtual meetings or virtual video calls are, I think, also very important. So our next questions is any suggestions on children doing work on their own and making sure that it gets done. And hopefully I'm saying that properly.
Yeah, so I think just to provide, I mean, definitely one thing, if kids are handing in work, then that's sometimes motivation, right? So, like for our teacher, I have to take a picture and hand in his work. So just the fact that he knows the teacher's still collecting it and looking at it definitely makes it more motivating to get done. The things that we don't have to hand out, do they all need to get done? As a parent, I want my kid to be the top of the class, but does every single little assignment always have to get done? I think that's where we have to think, is there a different way to teach our child the same topic but maybe in a different way? So I talked about the cooking example. Like, my child's assignment this week was actually to write a grocery list, but I didn't just get him to do a grocery list. We did a grocery list for our cooking experience. So therefore it kind of became for a purpose that made it easier for him to complete. um, you can also provide incentives. And I mean, I know some parents, you don't want to get into bribery, but there's nothing wrong with sometimes incentives, especially things like, maybe like they have to get like, the reward doesn't have to be immediate. So for some kids, an immediate
Yeah,
reward works really well, like a treasure box or a treat, or, an extra board game. Or we don't want to use playtime as a reward always, because kids should really be getting playtime
right.
regardless. It's easy as a parent to say, you don't do your homework, you're not going to get to play or go outside. But especially in times like the pandemic, they need that. So if we're taking that away, um, that's also not going to help their learning, because they need it for their mental health. So, but finding maybe something additional. So maybe even like, you can order online things like dollar store things that might work, or stickers, or to reinforce the behavior. So trying stuff like that can also sometimes work.
Yeah, and it can motivate them when it's not something that all parents like to do, or to continue, but it is, especially if we want them to complete their task independently and get their self work done. And I know sometimes it's hard for them to sit while they're at home, because they can do so many other things, but really just sit down and get their schoolwork done. And sometimes I guess we do have to, like, okay, you can get a sticker, or we can do make a recipe that you can pick or something like that. So I think that's some ways of kind of
And also,
navigating that.
if
Next
you
is,
have, sorry, just one other thing with regards to that. If you have a child that's older, just having those open discussions with them, like, why is it that it's so hard for them to get their work done? Because they might surprise you and have a good reason. Sometimes it could be that they don't actually understand, they don't see the purpose. Like, they might be feeling overwhelmed. They might not actually be able to do this. They might be missing something, but that they need, but might not want to tell you about it. Like, there could actually be reasons behind why kids are doing this. And if we don't know and we're just kind of
yeah,
assuming as well, then that could be an issue, because we might be fixing, one problem that we think might be existing, but not actually fixing the problem that might be causing it. Um, or the thing that might be causing the problem. So that's definitely something, like, if your child is old enough to have those important conversations, and talk openly about the pandemic, and validate how hard it actually is to do work from home. Because as a person who has to work from home, and I'm currently in school, um, it's hard to concentrate when you're at home. So having those open discussions about what you can do as a parent to make it easier for them, and maybe they can't do their homework right after school. Maybe they need their playtime and their outside time, and you can kind of work together and figure out, okay, this does need to get done. But if you were to have it your way, like when in the day would it get done? And maybe their solution is going to be what works, right? But try to work with them.
Yeah, open discussion is the best. So we don't, as parents, are assuming and making up all these things in our head and trying to like, okay, well, you need to get it done. I think it's really important to like figuring out what the bottom, like what to get to the bottom of the issue and figure out what is causing them not to get those things done, when we want them to do versus when they want to get it done. Um, at this time, are there any programs that Smiles Canada is offering children for the pandemic?
So Small Canada has actually really increased services during the pandemic because there's been such a great need for stuff. And if you do have a child with a disability, definitely I would say reach out. You can reach out by checking out the website. It's www.smilecan.org. Or if you have any specific questions, you can email info@smilecan.org. And you will see the website and everything is updated on what's happening right now. Our resources and our programming are for people that are part of the organization. So in order to become a Smile family, there is no fee involved, but you do kind of have to register and get an assessment. So if you have a child with a disability, or you're worried, again, speak with your pediatrician. And if you have any questions, you can definitely contact Smile via that email address.
So what, just so I guess for everyone to know, what's kind of the age range for Smiles and the
So we work
resources?
with Yeah, we work with children, so really anywhere from diagnosis, so kind of 0 to 18. We do have kids programming and youth programming separate, and then we do a lot of parent groups as well. So we do support groups. We offer financial assistance. During the pandemic, a lot of things have changed, and a lot of things have obviously gone virtual, and our in-person stuff has all been canceled for quite some time now. So inshallah, that will get started again. But definitely just trying to support families as they struggle through the pandemic, like kind of the rest of us. Their struggles are just um, much different, right? With not being able to have access to a lot of their social services that they might have been connected with before the pandemic. But also, like you said before, if kids are struggling and they might have had that added support at school, they don't have that if parents have chosen to keep their kids at home, right? So I mean, again, I'm going to reiterate, like, I don't think there's one choice that's right over the other. I think if you chose to send your kids to school, that you probably had very good reasons for your family. And if you chose to keep your kids at home, that you probably also had very good reasons to do that. But just trying to support people as best we can with the decisions that they've made that they felt were best for their family.
100%. I think that's all the questions we have. So I think we will wrap it up. But Jazakallah so much for taking your time out on Sunday and speaking with us and sharing your experience and your knowledge. Um, it's very good to get some other perspectives and to get some resources and things like that for families that are out there that are doing homeschooling with their children right now.
Thank you again very much for having me. It's definitely nice to be able to keep the discussion going. Um, and I wish everybody best of luck. And inshallah, there will be an end in sight soon. So just remember to, keep taking care of yourself and taking care of others, and really reaching out to community members that might be struggling and just helping them get through this difficult time.
Jazakallah so much.